You're listening to KFWB News Talk 980. My name is Les Brown. I'm Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy. And when you listen to this program, it builds your mental resiliency. It offsets the negatives in your life, and it creates new possibilities. Because by being exposed to positive things that can help you to get some breakthroughs, it really changes how your mind works. You overcome possibility blindness and begin to know that you can deal with anything. And today we're dealing with and talking about the power of forgiveness. And some of you have gone through some stuff and had some things done to you, and you had to forgive them. And we want to know, how did you come to that place? Or maybe you say, you know what? I can't go there. I'd like to. What you're saying makes sense. However, I'm stuck. I just can't see myself doing it. But there's some people that have been able to do that. And one such person is Don in Burbank. Your brother stole money from the family and lost the family house?
And it happened. That's exactly what happened.
That's what happened. And how did you forgive him, Don? You know, I tell you, that's tough. Was that the house of your mother and father?
No, that was my house.
Your house. He stole money from you.
He and I were partners in business for 25 years, and the business kept going down and down. This was the late 80s, early 90s.
Yes.
And I had to take my son out of college because couldn't afford it. I ended up pawning my wife's jewelry. I sold one of our cars, doing anything to survive and stay above.
Yes.
Keep my head above water.
Mm-hmm.
My wife kept saying, how come Mike hasn't sold his house? How come Mike didn't sell his car? How come Mike still has 2 kids in college?
Right.
I kept supporting him, saying, not my brother. You must be kidding. My brother wouldn't do this to me.
Right.
Lo and behold, I was out of town one week, and every Friday we would have a meeting, so I called in from out of town, and he tells me that the state leaned our account for some big bucks, $70,000. And I said, what the hell are we going to do? He says, well, I'm trying to find out. He was the one who ran the books. I was the one who did sales and design.
Yes.
Turns out that he says he found a large amount of money that was left in an old union account. We still had a union contract, and he was paying that off or something or other. Mm-hmm. Sounded like total BS. So the next time that I was back in the office, 3 days later, I break into his office, and I go through his desk, and I find the union account, and there's not the $40,000 that he said he found. There was only $4,000.
Wow.
And as I'm looking, lo and behold, I see he's got in the bottom of the drawer bank envelopes from a bank that I never heard of.
And so he was siphoning money off from the business and putting it in another bank account that you were not aware of, stealing money from you and the company.
I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
How did you come to the place, Don, that you were able to forgive him?
It's the best part of the story. This thing ate me up. We dissolved our business. We broke up. We didn't speak to each other. The families never got together. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. And one time I'm on a plane, and I meet a young guy who's sitting next to each other, and he's telling me all the stories about how terrible things that he's done to his family, and he's going back to help them get over this thing. He wants to apologize. So since he laid all this stuff on me, I started laying off on him the same thing, what happens to me and my brother.
Yes.
And he says to me, you have to forgive him. I said, you're crazy. Forgive that SOB. It's impossible. He says, here's a simple and quick story. 2 Buddhist monks are traveling to the High Temple, and during their trek to the High Temple, they meet a woman who is also trying to get on to another part of India, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
And this, during the course of their travels, every time they would stop, they would meditate and all these wonderful things. Well, they get to a river, and now they have to ford the river. And the older monk, who is teaching the younger one, says to the woman, get on my back, I'll carry you across the water. The younger monk says it's impossible, it's terrible. We have a vow, not just of chastity, we have a vow that we don't even touch a woman that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And they get him across the river. I'm making it very short, it's a long story. Get across the river, the woman goes her way, they go their way, and now instead of stopping and meditating and learning, now it's the younger monk is saying to the older one, how could you do it? But I've lost my love for my God. And They get to the steps of the high temple, and up to this point, the older monk had not said a word. He turns now to the younger monk and says, now here's what you must listen. When I chose to save that woman's life by carrying her across the water, knowing that she would have her arms around me, but I'm saving her life. I chose to violate my vows. For the past 3 days, since that time, you have been carrying my burden. It's not your burden, it's mine. So I looked at the young guy who's telling me this story. I said, you're absolutely right. This has been eating me up at this point for 6 years. The family has been torn apart. And he says, so what you have to do is forgive your brother. It's simple.
And you forgave him.
The next family meeting was happened to be just a week away.
Yes.
We're all together. I go to my brother and I say to him, Mike, let's talk. I don't want to talk, he says. I said, if you don't want to, I must. I said, Mike, all the things that you've done to me in my life, and I named them, there were 6 events that were terrible.
Yes.
Really terrible. So the last thing was really because he kept getting away with crap, and finally we left each other.
But
so
I want to ask you this. Did you forgive him?
I did. I said to him, Mike, I forgive you for each and every one of those things, and my hope would be, if there's something that I have done to you, that you would forgive me.
Wow. Man, that's powerful.
He turns around and walks away and doesn't say a word.
But you know what, Don? You did the right thing. I've got to go now, but thank you so much for calling in. Now, that's it. You know, when your own brother steals from you and you lose your home, you lose your business, and it tears up the family, and then you forgive him, he walks away. Trust me on this one here. First of all, Don, you're a good man because you the right brother, because if it had been another brother, that brother would be in jail right now for your brother. You know, let me tell you something. Somebody else would have taken him out. Wow. That says a lot, but it shows that it's possible. But but the key thing, he said that was the best part because he had been carrying that. He was the container for that anger and for that hatred. And sometimes you feel good in it. Sometimes you want to stew in it. You feel good being in darkness. I've been up in there, didn't want to come out, didn't want to have any light. Leave me alone. Up in here. I'm happy being in the darkness. I'm telling you, it was hard to drag me out of that. You hear me? I'm telling you, forgiveness it's a tough thing. It is not an easy thing, and that's what we're talking about. Have you ever had somebody do you wrong and you had to come to a place to forgive them? I was asking this girl, I said, how could you forgive your father for raping you? I mean, what did somebody who's supposed to provide and protect you raped you? How did you do that? And she said, it was a spiritual transformation. It was spiritual, it was not easy. I didn't think it was possible. She said, in fact, it wasn't me. It was God. She said the human part of me could not do it. God had to do that through me. And she said, I am so glad, she said, because when I got up off my knees, I was a free person. I was a new person. Yes, indeed. And now, that's what we've been talking about, dealing with this issue called forgiveness. 888-539-2980, 888-539-2980. And now, let's go to KFWB's Maggie McKay to get a preview of what's coming up on LA's Afternoon News. Hello, Maggie.
Hello, Les. Thank you so much. We have a lot of good stuff coming up at 4 o'clock, including lottery tickets. Have you gotten yours yet? You have till 7:45 tonight. This is a big one. It could actually be a record breaker, as a matter of fact. And giving an 8-year-old girl Botox for cosmetic reasons, and you won't believe who's giving them to her. You've got to hear this story. Plus, Target versus Walmart. Who's got the lower prices? We'll tell you, and it might shock you. And remember baby Jessica? She is now turning 25 tomorrow. The little girl in Texas who tumbled down the well and spent 2 days down there. Wait to hear her story today, 25 years later. And a story out of Japan's disaster that will definitely restore your faith in mankind. All these stories and more coming up at 4 on LA's Afternoon News.
Newegg.com